Hello everybody, welcome to another edition of As the Crow Flies Hiking. So you want to buy a backpacking quilt. Maybe you're moving from a sleeping bag over to a quilt because of weight, because of the bulk in your pack that you want to reduce. Let's talk about it. Backpacking quilts, the process of purchasing one. So I recently purchased another backpacking quilt. I have now two quilts essentially that I use. For many years, I guess about 4 years, I had the Enlightened Equipment 20-degree Revelation. Here it is. It is black in color. It has a red interior. I got it red interior because I wanted to be able to see it as I opened it up and at night to know where it was, and so the red kind of stuck out for me. But I got the Revelation. The Revelation has a characteristic foot box of cinched down with a bungee type cord and locked down here, and then it has a zipper that zips up to somewhere in your mid calf. And this is the 20-degree. Now I've had this quilt for about 4 years and I have found that it is of the utmost quality. It lofts up every time I open it. It seems to bounce back every time I compress it. It's really a great quilt. But over the years, I have found that sometimes when I'm in the winter backpacking months, the 20-degree, maybe I'm just old and my blood is starting to thicken and I get a little colder at night. But the 20-degree every once in a while is not enough for me. Now, I would say 80–90% of the time, 20-degree quilt is probably my go-to quilt, and I think it's probably one of the most popular degrees of quilts out there. It doesn't have a draft collar. They didn't offer that, I think, at the time. It simply is a, I think, 10 denier. It is the 850 fill. It is wide and it is long. That was the options that I had at the time, and I'm glad I did, because for me, a backpacking quilt that's wide and longer than it needs to be is great for the options of being able to move around, being able to move up and down the quilt as you need it, and having that, I guess, circumference or width around you to move and have flexibility inside the sleeping quilt. But I decided after saving for a long time that I would purchase a new quilt. So as I went through the process of deciding, like, what am I gonna do? How am I gonna buy this backpacking quilt? It's been 4 years since I bought one. It's been a great quilt for me. It's worked really well, but I wasn't sure going through this process again, what all the options would be. Well, there's a lot of options, and let's talk about it. First of all, let me talk about quality. What I was looking for was the best quality sleeping quilt out there. I wanted to find one that's gonna last me a long time. When you invest this kind of money into a backpacking quilt, you want one that's gonna last you a good long time. So let's talk about choices. What kind of choices are out there? Well, you've got to be thinking about a lot of different options when you're doing a quilt, and that is where it becomes somewhat cumbersome, but fun for me. In the last year, as I've been saving for a backpacking quilt, I've been looking at all the options. I would go on UGQ, I would go on Z-Packs, I would go on Outdoor Vitals, I would go on Hammock Gear, and I would go on Enlightened Equipment, and I would look at all the options that they offer. And that's where it boils down to. Those 4 or 5 different options is what I came down to. But there are all kinds of cottage vendors out there that make backpacking quilts all over the United States, and that is great because it's nice to have all those kinds of options. When you look at quilts, what you first got to think about is what degrees you want. Do you want a 0 degree? I mean, for me in the Southeast, I wouldn't go beyond a 0. Heck, I probably wouldn't go beyond a 10, but I did on this occasion, and I'll show you why. A 10 degree, a 20 degree, a 30 degree, 40 degree, 50 degree. It all depends on what the temperature is and where you're going and what it's going to work for you. So I decided to go this time with a 0 degree. Why a 0 degree? Well, I have a 20 degree. And what I've been doing, and sometimes when it got below or got around 20 degrees, I've been taking my 20-degree quilt and I have been layering it with another blanket, a down blanket, a cheaper down blanket, which added another pound to my load when it got down to really cold temperatures. The 20 degree is going to pretty much be for any type of backpacking trip I have. But if I have those cold temperatures, if I want to go up north somewhere, if I want to hike in the freezing cold just because I'm crazy, then I wanted something that was around 0 degrees or 10 degrees. So I decided I've got the 20 degree. Let's make a big difference and go down to 0 degree. Now, having a 0 degree bag, it would be very few and far between that I would use it. It's all about comfort at night. If I'm warm, then I'm gonna sleep well, and I'm gonna have a better day of hiking the next day. The next thing I look at is length and width. I like to have a wide quilt. So I'm looking for one, you know, they offer the 54, 55, they offer the 60, the 65. The wider quilt for me, the better, because I like to be able to move around in the quilt. Now, I traditionally, over the last 15, 20 years, before I got my first quilt about 4 or 5 years ago, I was in a normal sleeping bag. I always felt like I was in a cocoon. The zipper was hard to get in and out of. When I'd have to go to the restroom at night, you know, just getting in and out. But the quilt was a great option for me because it was less bulky, it was so much less weight, and it compact down in my pack a lot better. And I went with the long. I decided, being right at 6 feet, a little under 6 feet, that I wanted one that was a little longer than me so I could pull it over my head if I wanted to and just, you know, stay warm. Then you got to start talking about fill. Now, I'm not here to give you the science of what fill weight you should get. I mean, I understand that 850 fill is pretty much the standard, but there is a 900 fill and there is a 950 fill. Those fills are a lot lighter than the 850. And so you have to be looking at, do I want 850? Do I want 900? Do I want 950? I believe the Z-Packs quilts were 900, and then UGQ and Hammock Gear offered a 950. So I went ahead and went with the 850. I had it in the 20-degree bag, and I thought, well, I had no problems with the 850. It may be a, you know, a fraction heavier than the 9 or 950, so I went ahead and went with the 850 because the cost difference is a good bit substantial. The next thing that I thought about is, what is the foot box going to look like? This time, I was sure that I wanted the complete foot box sewn in, not zippered in. So it has a complete foot box at the end that I'll show you, and just worked for me. That's just something that I wanted instead of the zipper. So now, how do I choose? I've lowered the list down to Z-Packs, UGQ, Enlightened Equipment, Outdoor Vitals, and Hammock Gear. Those are the 5 that I came up with. Now, there are other great vendors out there. This is just where I came down. All I can say is something that recommended and worked for me. I can't really recommend something for you. You have to do the research. You go on to these different websites and you can build a quilt. Some of them have more options than others. So you look at the different variations, you look at the temperature, you look at the weight, you look at the size, you look at the fill, you look at the draft collar and options for a dynamic design on the back so that it will stay closer to your body. But I knew I wanted a quilt because when you're in a sleeping bag, I mean, everything compresses under you anyway, so you don't need all that material underneath you. What you need is a good sleeping pad underneath you to keep the warmth in. They were tough choices. It was, you know, a bunch of great brands to look at, but I decided ultimately to go with Enlightened Equipment. Why? I don't know. I almost clicked several times to purchase one or the other, but I had used Enlightened Equipment. It had worked well for me. I knew at the time that it was only a 4-week turnaround to get my quilt to me. And that was a great option for me because I had a trip coming up. It was going to be cold and I wanted to get it quickly. Some of the other options said it would be 8 to 12, even 16 weeks before they could build you a quilt. Next, you got to think about cost. That factored in for me. You know, I'd saved some money over the time. I'd put back money each month, but then there is a good cost difference between different companies and different quilts. I knew that the longer quilt I got, the wider quilt I got, the more fill that I got, the higher fill that I got, all those things would add to the cost of the quilt. I knew that 0 was going to be a lot more expensive than a 20-degree, 40 or 50. The next thing you got to consider is, do you want synthetic versus down? Now, I know there's a lot of discussion out there about down and what is, you know, questionable sourcing of down and things like that from different areas. I'm not very versed in that, not very knowledgeable, but I really like down. I've found it to be compressible, and so I simply went with down. But I will say that for those that are looking at the differences between synthetic and down, the down is going to use goose and duck feathers. But I can tell you that that is the difference. You're getting a down feather from an animal versus a synthetic, which is a different fill of different layers of fabrics that keep you warm. The last thing I thought about was the fill. Am I going to overstuff the bag? Am I going to just have the normal fill? With the Z-Packs, I saw on the website that they go ahead and overfill their bags and sleeping quilts. So they offer a lot of different options, but they already overfill it. So that was something I thought about, and almost several times bought the Z-Packs because I really liked it, and I've had other people that I've hiked with that had Z-Packs who have really enjoyed their sleeping quilt. There's some other options out there. There is a draft collar, which ultimately I did. I got the draft collar on the top of the sleeping bag, which gives you a little more warmth, and as you compress it, it keeps the air from coming out, the warm air of the bag. Am I going to get the dynamic suspension or design? I'll have to look at that, but UGQ offered a way to the quilt underneath you to come together a little bit more snug than the other quilts, which is a great option. I just about got the UGQ quilt, but decided I'm gonna go with what I know, the Enlighten equipment. The last thing that I considered was the sleeping pad strap. The Enlighten equipment, as well as the other brands, offer a pad strap that goes underneath your pad and then attaches around. Now, I've taken the straps off of this and didn't bring this on this trip, but essentially these little snaps right here will attach to a pad strap that either can go around the bottom of the pad or can connect to the top and simply keep your pad attached to the strap. Now, what you simply try to do is on the two different places that it attaches a strap, you attach the strap underneath your pad, but the bottom of the foot box stays on top of the pad, and that way your feet are up above, and then the pad straps go around the bottom of your pad. I'm using the NeoAir XLITE. It is I want to say it's 4.4, 4.5 R value, which is a great R value for me, keeps me warm underneath. And part of your sleep system is, yes, the sleeping quilt, but then the pad has to be warm enough. When you're buying a sleeping pad that's compatible to your quilt, make sure that the R value of your pad is not going to ruin your night's sleep by not keeping you warm enough underneath, so something to think about. But the straps are very important to me because I want to be able to strap my sleeping quilt to the pad without worrying about it moving and things like that. Ultimately, I went with the Enlighten Equipment 0 degree bag. Here it is. Absolutely love this thing. Now, some people will say, a lot of people I hike with will say, you went with a 0 degree bag? When are you ever gonna need a 0 degree bag? Some people sleep very warm. I mean, they never get cold. They could go out on a 30 degree night with a 50 degree quilt and be fine. Some people sleep really, really cold. It could be 50 degrees and they have to have a 20 degree quilt to stay warm. I guess I've gotten older. I guess my blood is starting to thicken. I don't know what's going on, but essentially I wanted a 0 degree quilt. Is it bulkier? Yes. Is it heavier? Yes, it's heavier. But does it compact down to what I want? Absolutely. I will sacrifice a little bit of bulk, a little bit of weight, and keep this at the bottom of my pack and be warm at night. Because ultimately, if I get a good night's sleep, the next day of hiking is gonna be fine. As you can see on the different websites, you have a lot of different options. I mean, there's a lot of different colors and designs and things. I went back and forth with colors. I'm mostly a gray or drab kind of person. I do like green though. So I got the green. It's kind of like a emerald green color. And on the inside, I went with the gold. I don't know, I just like the green and gold. I'm not sure why. I did go with a draft collar. As you can see, it's a little bit of fill around the top. So you cinch that down and it just helps to keep some of that air, warm air from coming out. Also with the Enlighten Equipment Enigma, you can see the difference between the Enigma and the Revelation is it has a fully sewn foot box. And as you can see, it comes up to right below the knee there with the foot box and then goes up to the places where you can put the pad strap on. You simply take the pad strap, strap it around here, and then attach it to both sides. So this thing really cinches up if you want to, almost all the way to the top. And then at the end, you have another button all the way at the top to keep you in there really good. And then just like all my other quilts, you have this stretchy cord that pulls it in and tightens so that you can get it right around your neck. I love this quilt. Yes, I've used it only a few nights now, but I was warm all night and I was comfortable. And that's essentially what you want when you go on a backpacking trip. Well, I hope you guys have enjoyed this edition of As a Crow Flies Hiking. I hope it's helpful. Essentially what I wanted to do was show you some of the options of backpacking quilt. There are some great videos out there that are a lot more insightful than mine about backpacking quilts. I mean, Justin from Justin Outdoors, excellent video he did on this. So I would encourage you to check his video out. What I'll say in relation to that is do your research. I mean, look at it. I mean, it's a lot of fun to me over the past year to build a quilt, not click it, not buy it, go to another one, build a quilt, not click it, and just keep going. So I had fun with that, enjoying the process, and finally, I went ahead and purchased a quilt. Thank you guys for watching this episode of As the Crow Flies Hiking. I hope it was helpful. If you liked the video, I hope you'll subscribe to the channel and like the video and then share it with others. Hey, comment below if there's something that I missed. Yeah, there's probably something that I missed. Comment below and let me know what I missed or any discussion that you would like to have about quilts. I'm happy to help if I can. If I don't, I'll direct you to somebody else that knows the answers. All right, guys, I will see you on the next adventure of As the Crow Flies Hiking.